reverse order on some things. Because these things go together. So let's talk about church business policies and business meetings, constitution and bylaws, just the business of the church. I told you when you talk to a church, you need to find out if they have a constitution and bylaws. I used to tell guys that hope that they don't. I really don't believe that anymore. I think it's a good thing for a church to have constitution and bylaws. But I will tell you this, that I think the more they focus on principles instead of on specific policies, the better. When I came to Buck Run, the bylaws had no less than 20 committees prescribed. You must have these 20 committees. And I every year had to appoint committees that did not meet and did nothing because it was in the Constitution that we have a committee that does this and that. The Constitution and bylaws should be more about guiding principles, not about specific policies. So 7 years in, we changed our bylaws to reflect more the way we work. I'm happy we'll get Matt to upload a copy of our bylaws up there just so you can see them. It's a good thing for you to get copies of different churches' constitution and bylaws just so you can get eyes on them and sort of learn best practices. And you can find those on the web. A lot of churches put theirs up there. But you want to have good, clear declaration of who you are. I think if you want to protect the future of the church, you need to put your general doctrinal parameters in there. Like we're a church that believes in the infallibility of scriptures, or we subscribe to the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, whatever it is, because I think that protects you for the future. And if the church ever departs from it, it has to be intentional. And where I want to safeguard Buck Run is not how many committees they have. Who gives a rip? I want them to always believe the Bible. And so that's the kind of stuff I think you really need to put there so that when a church changes, they know they're changing. There's no drift into it. It's a conscious decision and actually revolt against their own history. But I organize everything about the way I operate Buck Run is so that we might have, we can make quick decisions and deal with stuff as quickly as possible. I just don't like things hanging around. And if you're in a church where, it takes you forever to make decisions, in this day, by the time you get to make the decision, the opportunity is lost or something's moved on. So we try and streamline things, and our Constitution and bylaws sort of prescribe that. The other thing, I'll just tell you on a personal level, as leader, I really believe that predictability is one of the greatest measures of leadership. So I'm a very predictable person. My guys don't sit around in a room going, what do you think he'll think about this? They almost all instinctively know what I'm going to think about any given thing. Even if they disagree about it, they sort of know where I am. But because they know me so well, they make decisions when I'm not in the room. They're able to execute things without me being around. And I'm just real clear about that, so I don't have subtext. You don't listen to me say something and then go, now what did he really mean? I'm just not that guy. I'm very open, very honest. People at Buck Run, it's been years since anybody's asked like, okay, I know that's the story, but what really happened? Nobody asked that at Buck Run because I'm going to tell you what really happened or what I really thought, or I'm going to tell you I can't tell you, but I'm not going to mislead you and misguide you. There's some things you can't talk about. Personnel matters. You can't publicly talk about a lot. You fire somebody in the state of Kentucky, you can fire anybody for any reason, but once you do it, you can't talk about it. Because then it's seen as vindictive. And this is why standard business practice, once somebody's let go and say personnel matter, we never comment on personnel matters. And that's what you have to say. Now, in a church setting, like in a seminary here, we let somebody go, and we tell the press, personnel matter, we can't comment on personnel matters. Okay, the only people we answer to are our board. In a church, you're answering to everybody, even if you can't talk about it. So it does present an issue, but this is where if you establish always that your goal is to be transparent, and you're not the kind of pastors trying to hide things or pull something over on somebody or operating politically, and you make full report of things, then they trust you. So when I first went to Buck Run, I mean, it was just committee meetings all the time, just having to explain things all the time. Little by little, it changed. And when I got 7 years in, we changed the bylaws, streamlined things quite a bit. That just doesn't happen anymore. So when when I first came, we did monthly business meetings, and on the night that they did business meetings, they did them on Wednesday night, they wouldn't have the prayer meeting. We wouldn't do preaching. They just business meeting. Now, guys, this is the dumbest thing you can ever do. That ranks up there with hydrogen balloons or something that explode. It just is asking for trouble. Because if you say, okay, we're going to get together tonight, we're all accustomed to being in this room for 1 hour on Wednesday nights, and we're not doing anything but our business meeting, you know what you're saying? All right, let's gripe for an hour. Because it doesn't take long to conduct our business. We got all this time, though, so we can all share our opinions. And I've been in churches where they micromanaged everything. I mean, if you changed the brand of toilet paper you were putting into bathrooms, they had to vote on it. Well, that's just silly. You don't need to be talking about that level of stuff in your business meetings. So here's my philosophy. You need to plan well in your annual budget. And you use your budget as basically your ministry plan for the year. And you present that budget. So you work with, however your structure is set up. At Buck Run, we have a finance committee, and we have a personnel committee and nominating committee. And those are only standing committees. Everything else we call a team. Teams like missions team, things like that. Anybody who joins at any point during the year, we can put them on a team. They say, we're interested in missions. Good, you're on the missions team. They can do that right now. But personnel committee, finance committee, those people are chosen by the nominating committee, and they're voted on by the church. And they have specific tasks. They handle sensitive matters on behalf of the church. And we really try and put sharp people on them, people that represent the different constituencies in the church. So you need people on there that are old, people that are young, people that have been around a long time, people that are fairly new, business people, homemakers, farmers. We want the whole gamut on there, but we try and get people who are really savvy, who've demonstrated. Like on the finance team, we want people that are in business or who have demonstrated their own financial savvy by the way they handle their money. And, we have CEO types. We have a lot of state workers. We have secretaries and undersecretaries of different cabinets in our church, and we use them. Chief financial officers of the local hospital, things like that. We put them on finance team, finance committee. And so we work through them to plan the budget. Now, when I first came, I personally oversaw the planning of the budget. I've been to one finance committee meeting in the last 5 years. I don't go to them because I don't need to go to them. Scott, my exec, he handles that. He meets with them. He represents me to them. He knows my values. He knows what I want. They know what I want. So, for instance, we give 11% of our budget we have in the past to the cooperative program. And I have made that inviolate. They've never once brought up changing that. Past year, I told them, and I brought it up, we've just built a $10 million building, $12 million total project, and we're giving twice what the typical Southern Baptist church gives to the cooperative program, in addition to about an $80,000 Lottie Moon offering, and we spend an awful lot on missions. The percentage of our budget is huge. Not to mention, what we spend on salaries at Buck Run is a lot lower than most churches spend. It's so low that when we were trying to get our loan for our new building, we had banks call and say, you're hiding something from us. You can't be spending that small a percentage of your budget on salaries and benefits. Nobody does it at that. We do. And that's how low it was, but we weren't hiding anything. So this past year, I told the finance committee, I went about sort of a shift in plans and hiring an additional person, and I said, I'd be willing for us to lock in that number so that as our budget grows a little bit, we're not changing the percentage that we give to the cooperative program, but we're locking in. It's like $150,000. So it's at this point, Buck Run's given, I don't know, somewhere between almost $3 million to the cooperative program, and that's quite astounding for a church that was historically small. And they didn't bring that up. I brought it up. They wouldn't cross over what I set out as a parameter. So when you're predictable and you're clear about what you believe and what your principles are, you empower people to act on your behalf within those. And, if somebody disagrees with the principle, then you have a discussion about the principle. But 15 years in, all the people that disagree with my principles are either gone or dead or whatever, or have been converted. And I don't mean that necessarily spiritually, but at this point, I'm just saying 15 years in, most, 70% of the people have joined that church since I've been pastor, and they came in predisposed to follow me because I was part of the calculation in their mind about why they joined. That just happens. The longer you're at someplace, the more clout you have for that very reason. This is why long-tenured pastorates ultimately are so much easier. And that's, tough it out. Let me digress and tell you one of York's secrets. You're going to have a 1-year crisis, a 3-year crisis, a 5-year crisis, and a 9-year crisis. It's almost like clockwork. And you can just count it. So 1 year in, it can slide 6 months one way or the other, but it's pretty much the same way. It doesn't matter what church you pastor. 1 year in, you're going to be tested. You'll usually survive that. Most guys don't want to quit only 1 year in. And so they'll tough it out. And then when it starts to happen again 2 years later, year 3, you have some guys go, oh, I'm not going to put my wife through this again. We're out of here. They start sending out the resumes and they go somewhere else. And guess what happens when they go somewhere else? 1 year in, they have a crisis. And 3 years in, they have a crisis. And so then they go, okay, we're not going to do this all over again. Here we go. And I know some guys that say, well, I've got 30 years experience in the ministry, when what they really have is 3 years experience 10 times. It's a very different thing. My advice to you, this is why I started out by saying, you need to find a place where you can plant your life as early as you can and then stay there. Now that seminary church is not that, it's not that place where you can plant your life. And it might take you a time or two to find the place where you can plant your life. That should be your goal. Find the place where you can plant your life and stay there, because the longer you stay there, the more you understand them and they understand you, and you trust each other and you overlook each other's faults. This is the mark of true love, by the way. Tanya and I don't even notice each other's faults. It's not that we don't have them, it's that we don't notice them. There's something about being in love that you just start to disregard the other faults. It's like Noah's sons walking in backwards, cover their father's nakedness. There's just such a love that I'm not going to notice. I'm not going to look at your faults. And that's what successful married couples do. It's not that they overlook each other's faults, it's that they don't see them. They find a way to just idealize one another. And I believe in a church relationship, when pastors and churches love each other, they find a way to do that. I know theoretically Buck Run's not a perfect church, but I tell you, I feel like it is. I love that church so much. They're just such a wonderful people. And I get treated so much better than I deserve. I got to think that they're feeling better about me than I am. And I just think that's what loving each other is. So when you're clear about your principles, when you have integrity in the way you handle stuff, don't ever compromise the way you handle money. In fact, my name isn't on a check. I can't sign checks. I don't handle our money. I don't look and see what people give. It's not that I argue you don't have the right to, but I just choose not to. I don't look at anybody's tithing record. The only thing I ever did was when we put together our building committee, we called it the vision team. I gave a list of the people that I wanted to put on the committee to our treasurer. I said, I need you to vet them. If there's anybody on here that does not give enough that it looks like a tithe, you just use your judgment, I need to know. This is just between you and me, but I'm not going to have anybody on that vision team who's not supporting our church. Tell me, you take these 3 off. Now, I don't even remember who the 3 were, but I remember that it happened. And okay, it's good to know, because you shouldn't get to make decisions for everybody else if you're not giving the same level of everybody else. And so I'm real clear about these things, and I don't handle the money. I just have an expectation of people, and and I'm open and transparent, and so there's a trust here. So people can act within the parameters I set. They can make decisions, and I will just tell you, it works really well. You can't start out there. You have to earn that. You have to get there over time, but that's sort of the goal. So we started out with monthly business meetings, and after a while, there's just such a sameness to them, and we really weren't voting on anything. We moved to quarterly business meetings. One of the changes I made, as I began to tell you earlier, was I said, well, we're going to have a service when we have business meetings. We're not going to do just business meetings. So I preached, or now there are several things that we do, we put with it. And you got to fill up that time, so you're not just giving people a gripe session. Hey, everybody tell us, what are your concerns? What's troubling you? What's eating at you? You give people that kind of a floor, then you're saying, please look at our faults. Please, let's get out the magnifying glass and think about the bad stuff. Don't do that. Make your business meetings positive and encouraging. And so we moved to quarterly business meetings, and we fill them with good stuff. Our actual business usually takes less than 5 minutes. So, we have minutes. We have our financial statement. Nobody ever asks questions about our financial statement. But one reason why is we encourage and invite them to at other times, like call, ask. So when we do our annual budget, we put it out a minimum of 2 weeks before our budget meeting. We schedule a meeting that anybody who has questions can come to this meeting and ask our Scott's there and our chairman of our finance committee. And you can come and ask them questions. Scott and the chairman of our finance committee go, and guess how many people come? None. 0. We still have the meeting. Now, what does that tell you? It tells me that, first of all, we're giving them information at other places, and they're comfortable that things are being done well. We show them these things all the time. So when we give the annual budget, we also give a budget explanation. Matt, where's Matt? He's gone. Well, I don't know if he's loaded that up yet, but if not, we're going to give you a copy of our budget and our ministry plan. Justin, you worked on that this year, didn't you? You did that. You did a lot of extra work for it, and it looked sharp. Now, here's another one of York's little insights. I think I told Scott this a long time ago. If you do it really sharp and make it look really slick, people just don't question it. If it looks bad, like you did it on an old mimeograph machine or something with an IBM Selectric typewriter that, one of the keys was off or something. If it looks, if it looks like you don't have your act together, it's like putting blood in the water and inviting the sharks to come feed. They're just all over it. So I'm telling you, the more you do stuff with excellence, the more people trust it. So when you make it look really sharp, and this year was our best looking one ever. We did a little booklet. It had a letter from our different pastors talking about what their ministry plan for the year is. And it had our budget. It talked about if our budget significantly changed in any area, we explained why this is going up, why this is going down, what we plan to do, what our salaries and benefits accomplish, and who, it just explains it. And we try and preclude arguments and objections by answering them, by being transparent. And if people have a real problem with it, then they'll bring it up. But again, this many years in, it hadn't even come up in a lot of years. We do not publish our salaries individually, except for mine. But we tell our members that you all have the right to do it. You want to see it, you come in, and Scott will show you all of our individual salaries. But we don't publish it because I want the right to pay people different amounts. I might value one job more than another and think it deserves more. He's got more training or whatever. I don't like workers necessarily comparing salaries with each other. So we don't just, and also if they have kids, it's uncomfortable for a teenager for them to see their parent's salary and compared to somebody else's. So we just have the large category of salaries and benefits and show different subcategories, but not individuals. But we offer to our members, if you would like to know it, you are welcome to come and see, and we'll show it to you. And every year we have one person who does it, and it's the same person. She comes in, she looks at it, says, thank you, and leaves, and that's it. She just likes to know. We're happy to show her. We can justify all of our salaries. They are within that range of, in fact, we're on the low side. Certainly for the total amount, we're on the low side. And we can justify everything. So when you do put together a budget, you want to be able to get them excited about it, highlight the things you're doing, the mission that you're accomplishing. Remember, you reproduce what you honor, so you want to honor them for giving to it. And at Buck Run, our giving has been just fantastic because one of the things that I've drummed in their head while we're building this building is we're not going to ask our missionaries to pay for it. So we have not decreased our missions giving any while we've built the building. And I'm convinced that if we had, our giving would be less. But by saying we're not decreasing the sense of mission just to build ourselves a nice building, man, people have given more. When our IMB missionaries come home stateside, there's one couple that's out of our church in Panama. She has personally told me, we are so grateful. You didn't ask us to bear the brunt of this building. We love this building. We love what God's doing here at Buck Run, but thank you for reminding the people not to make missionaries pay for it. And it matters a lot. You want to give people something that they can buy into, that they're excited about, what you're accomplishing. So at Buck Run, we can point to all these things. Look, when you give to Buck Run, look what it does. You're blessing our missionaries around the world, and the gospel's proclaimed around the world. And we're planting a church in Fort Collins. We've got a church planter in San Francisco. We do all this work through the KBC. And, we just go on. And we get them excited about it. So that they're excited about giving, they don't feel like their arm is twisted or they're being manipulated into it. One other word, some churches do annual pledges. I'm going to talk a little bit more sometime later about capital projects, raising money for buildings and things like that. And sometimes you have to do that. But when I was in seminary, I was a member of a church down in West Memphis where they did every year, they asked their people to make pledges for the year, what they would give. That's too much work. For me, I don't like that just because it puts a burden on the staff to do all that calculation and stuff. And B, it just makes me talk about money too much. I rarely talk about money at Buck Run. We talk about the mission a lot. I think when people buy into the mission, their money will come with them. Their excitement will bring the money. So I don't have to talk about it very much. So I'm not a big fan of annual pledges for budget giving. Not a wrong thing, but it's a lot of work. We do commitments. We express our intention, but we don't call them vows. We don't say that it's a debt, but you say what you plan to give, like to our building program. We call it Abide now. Over the next 3 years, you state that intention, but then that's between you and the Lord. We will send out statements saying, here's what you said and here's what you've given so far, and leave it at that. That's between them and the Lord. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. Any questions about the finances and the budget process? Your best thing that you can do is get copies of budgets from churches and look and see different size churches. But I really encourage you, even if you're pastor of a very small church, have a budget. You just need to have an intention. Here's what we are trusting the Lord to provide this much, so that here's what we can do with it. And the better your budget is, the less you have to do that penny ante stuff in your monthly or quarterly business meeting. So we vote on our budget in our November meeting, and then that sets our ministry for the next year. And people don't, we don't have to debate. Here's what we've got set. We're going to do this with it. So then you have budget managers of the different areas, and that works real well. Stay within your budget. Have a reputation of honoring what you tell the church, and they'll trust you and stick with you.